So some of you already know this, but some do not know this. I am a huge fan of professional wrestling, and I don't cover as much wrestling on this channel, but today I think I'm going to talk about a little bit more wrestling, in particular, my opinions on Triple H. Now, don't get me wrong, I grew up idolizing Triple H. I loved Triple H growing up. He had the look, he had the attitude, he was the cerebral assassin, he was the game. And I was hoping that one day, whenever he took over power at WWE, that we would see better days. And for a while, we did. However, as a lot of people started to notice, myself included, things have not been going so swiftly for Triple H as of late. And I can't be the only person to know this. I can't be the only person to have seen the patterns here. But there's a lot of suspicious stuff about Triple H, right? Again, don't get me wrong. I love Trips. I love Hunter. All right? I love him as a wrestler. To some extent, I like him as a booker. I think his booking days as the head booker of NXT from the Black and Gold era between, 2012 to 2020, something like that. However long he was in the Black and Gold era, that was peak NXT, not to be ever matched ever again. NXT now has nothing on the original Black and Gold era. That is all thanks to Triple H. However, let's take a step back and analyze Triple H's sort of suspicious history. Now, everything seemed pretty fine in the 90s, up until the point where he actually married Stephanie McMahon. I think that's where we start our journey down the suspicious path of Triple H. So some of y'all may know, some of y'all may not know, Triple H was dating a woman named Chyna. At the time, they were on screen together. They were a couple. Now, I could be completely wrong. This is just me theorizing, and maybe I'm right. But I was under the impression that when Triple H was dating Chyna, he had an affair with Stephanie McMahon, and then that's what led to breaking up with Chyna. Now, he has since given Chyna respect. Obviously, there was no hard feelings, but for Chyna, if you look at the trajectory of her career after that moment, not only did she quit wrestling and made sporadic appearances throughout the wrestling world, she joined the prawn industry, the adult industry, and then sequentially, which led to her downfall, and not in a bad way, but in a way, the type of thing that she offed herself. At least that's what I was under the impression of. Again, please correct me if I am wrong. I'm not trying to spread any fake information here. But that was under my impression. She died very young and didn't go out the way people should go out. And it's sad. It all spawned from the original breaking up with Triple H because he had an affair with Stephanie McMahon thing. That's the start of the journey there. Then we tumble on forward. Triple H has a couple babies with Stephanie McMahon. All right, I'm all good with that. That's, have a family. I like that. Have a family with the person you love. But naturally, Triple H, being the guy that he was, being the sort of industry good guy, good boy, basically. I don't want to say face, because he was heel a lot of the time, and he's probably a better heel than he was a face, if I'm being honest. But he was definitely made for this industry, and he wanted to control it, and you can tell. So he joins the McMahon family through his marriage to Stephanie. That is how he gains power to the McMahons. All right? Now, we're going to get into some, jump ahead to about 20 years or so. Triple H has a heart attack. We see the Black and Gold NXT era, right? We see how well that plays out. And to this day, I still love the Black and Gold NXT era at the Full Sail University. I love it. Unfortunately, a lot of those characters did not make it out of NXT very well. They got the main roster nerf, as the kids call it. So, Triple H has a heart attack around 2020, 2021, something like that. When he has a heart attack, Vince McMahon steps in and rebrands Black and Gold NXT to NXT 2.0. When that happens, ratings drop, fan interest drops. A lot of people, they dip. I was one of those people. I was one of those people who dipped out at NXT 2.0 because I didn't want a bunch of gay pride flag painting shit all over my wrestling. All right? Sorry if I'm being bigoted, but I just didn't want to see all that gay shit. All right? So, when that happens, Triple H is resting up, healing up from his heart attack, and then we get the news about a year later, Vince McMahon is a part of a scandal, part of a sex trafficking scandal. We all know this story. Vince McMahon is forced to step down. 6 months later, he's back. Then more allegations come out. More criminalizing data comes out. Some against Brock Lesnar as well. And all of a sudden, Vince McMahon forced to step down again. Now, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes at WWE. I don't know all the details because I'm not within the company. But you could easily say that Vince McMahon is keeping a phone tab with Triple H. He's keeping a phone tab with all the people there. Based off of Vince McMahon's recent birthday party get-together that he did, Stephanie McMahon and Vince McMahon are not on good terms. That is completely understandable. But for some reason, Vince and Triple H are still on good terms. Now, I'm not throwing any shade at Triple H, but what I am saying is that Vince McMahon had been doing what he was doing, all these dirty things behind the scenes, for years. If you look at the actual documents and you look at the actual data, he had been getting away with this shit for damn near 2 decades, maybe longer, and nobody said anything. Even Fabulous Moolah had her day, but this was a point where it's like, okay, he's a billionaire, we let him do what he wants, he's the boss, nobody was going to step to him. But I think that the quality from 2016 was a pretty good year, but 2017 to 2019 was a pretty dark era of Vince McMahon booking. I believe Bruce Pritchard was in on that too, but that was a pretty dark era of Vince McMahon booking. Hit with the pandemic, hit with all the releases over the years. You know, Vince McMahon was starting to show a lot of age in his booking, and it was pretty clear that, well, somebody needed to step in and take him out of the picture. How would you do that to somebody as powerful as Vince McMahon? Well, you bring out the Me Too. You bring out the allegations. And boom, he steps down. Who's going to step up? Nick Khan. And who's that? Triple H. Triple H. Not Shane. Not Stephanie. Triple H. Weird how that works, right? So, my theory on that is that Triple H knew about this information. He's withheld it all this time. And so is most of WWE. They were in on it. Not saying that they were participating in it, but they knew about it actively, and then they waited for the right moment to sweep in and get rid of Vince McMahon. That shit is some Succession, Game of Thrones type, checkers playing right there, bro. Or chess playing, rather. Not to mention, if we take it back about, say, 10, 11 years, Triple H, this is something that I will never let go of, right? I'm a huge fan of Undertaker. I'm a huge fan of Sting. And all Undertaker and Sting fans want is Undertaker versus Sting. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter when. We all want that dream match, right? Well, in 2014, Sting finally debuts at Survivor Series to lead up to a WrestleMania match with Triple H. You had a perfectly good Sting while he was on his last run. You had a perfectly good Undertaker who was coming back from the redemption from losing against Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 30. And you didn't at WrestleMania 31 in 2015? You didn't have the two brain cells to put together to have Sting versus Undertaker. Two perfectly good, they're old, but they can still go have a match at WrestleMania 31. Boom. It's simple stuff. And yet, Triple H needed to have Sting in a WrestleMania match. He needed to bury WCW. He was so insecure about the Monday Night Wars. WWE was so insecure about the popularity of Sting, of TNA, of NWO, of Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and Hulk Hogan that they needed to bury all of them with DX. And I'm never going to let that go. They meaninglessly buried WCW. They buried Sting. They buried the NWO because of an ego trip that they had because they were insecure about the Monday Night Wars, even though they fucking won. They won the Monday Night Wars. There was nothing to be insecure about. And they did that instead of giving the fans what they wanted, which was Sting, Undertaker. Oh, but what about Bray Wyatt? When is Bray Wyatt? Bray Wyatt lost to The Undertaker at the time where Bray Wyatt should have won. Not to mention, Undertaker and Bray Wyatt had another re-round a couple months later anyway. And even a couple months later anyway, Sting and Undertaker were both perfectly healthy there. They had so many opportunities to get us Sting versus Undertaker. But no, Triple H needed to have Sting. Triple H needed Vince McMahon kicked out of the company so he could take full creative control. Vince McMahon, well, not Vince McMahon, Triple H, needed to marry Stephanie McMahon. Sure, maybe he loves her, and there's no problem with that. But he needed that. What it did to China is not right. I'm not blaming Triple H for that. I'm just saying, look at the pattern of events here, and let's ask how suspicious Triple H actually is. Now, again, I like Triple H. I want to like Triple H. I'm only throwing these things out because it's Dark Side of the Ring conspiracy theory crap. That's all I'm saying. I don't hate Triple H. I've never have. But I think his attitude as of late has called for somebody like me to step up and say this kind of thing, to get this off my chest a little bit, you know? Because seeing Brock Lesnar come back at the final breath of John Cena's retirement tour and squash Cena with no payoff, no real, no real meaning behind the match. Brock Lesnar just beats Cena and boom, gone. Brock Lesnar's gone. Cena moves on to the next opponent and he's only got like a handful left. So these booking decisions, as much as I liked 2024 for WWE, as much as I liked the revival, the renaissance of WWE under Triple H's creative control, we have to look at Triple H's scammy, egotistical sort of background to really understand why and how things are happening the way they are. And I think it's pretty evident and clear TKO, for the most part, is who to blame, because TKO wants moments. They want cameos. They want big pyrotechnics. They want all the money. They want all the flashes and ticket sales, but they don't want any character development. They don't want any story development. Triple H is better at doing character and story development. Unfortunately, I personally believe Triple H is better at creating bad guys, whilst where Vince McMahon was better at creating good guys. Vince McMahon was better at creating faces, people like John Cena. You know, that's what Vince McMahon was good at. Triple H creates jaded bad guys. He creates the Tommaso Ciampas. He creates the Samoa Joes, the Demon Finn Balor, right? He creates the Adam Coles from the Undisputed Era. Triple H is better at doing the heels, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video. And so that is a flaw that Triple H sort of has, is that he kind of makes everything a bit darker and everything a bit more complex. Not to say that that's a bad thing. It actually makes the content more interesting. But as we've seen lately with the John Cena heel turn, he wanted to turn a good guy into a bad guy, and it worked out poorly. And I know that was probably for appeasing TKO to have that big moment, but it had zero payoff. John Cena flipped the script and turned face on a SmackDown in one segment. It had no consistency whatsoever. So, off my little tangent here, I still like Triple H. I still want to like Triple H. I think his attitude, his booking, has been pretty mediocre to trash lately. His attitude in terms of, like, you know, what people say online is nothing. I agree with that. I agree with his assessment about what people say online means nothing and has, you know, no bearing on your life whatsoever. Because, I mean, when you have all these people packing out your arenas, you know, you don't need to listen to people online. But if you did listen to people online and you did not ignore it and dismiss it, then maybe you could learn something. Maybe you could come up with something creative. Maybe you could try something new. Unfortunately, the way that he sort of dismisses it is the kind of way that Hollywood, Disney, Star Wars, any director, any actor likes to attack the fans. And it did feel more like a personal fan attack from Triple H himself, which I was not a fan of. I did not like that comment that he had. It's whatever. He's been gaslighting on a few things. Let's just pay attention to his ego, his attitude, and his booking. Put the pieces together and ask yourself, was this a good idea? Is Triple H really the guy now? Has he lost it? Do you think he can recover? I find it odd that Tony Khan is picking up the scraps with AEW and making a better product than they had a year ago, but still mediocre product, better than what WWE is producing at this moment. I'm not saying AEW and WWE are working together, but I find that as an odd coincidence. However, businesses work that way. Sometimes you have down slopes, sometimes you have uphill slopes. It is whatever. But I'm off my little Triple H tangent. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I know nothing. I'm just saying. Let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. Like, share, comment, subscribe. What do you think about Triple H? I still like him. I just not a fan of his booking as of lately, and not a fan of the attitude. I'll just say that. So, don't smoke crack, y'all.